Super. So let's start. Welcome to another edition of the Into the Block webinar series. So we spent every 3 weeks, we try to pick a topic that is at the intersection of data science, machine learning, crypto assets, and host these discussions about some techniques and methods that were piloting, experimenting with in the Into the Block platform. The last one that was very popular. We explored the classification of exchanges using machine learning and blockchain information. Today, we're gonna pick the controversial topic on social and news media analytics for crypto assets. I'm gonna apologize, my voice is a little bit affected. It's been affected since the last few days, but we're gonna go quickly through this. So a few logistics about the webinar. If at any point you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A panel. Part of my team is helping to monitor that, and we can stop and clarify those questions throughout. So let's keep it informal, let's keep it interesting, and we have a lot of content to cover. So a quick intro about myself. My name is Jesus Rodriguez. I'm the one of the founders and the head of technology at Into the Block. We're a platform that focuses on bringing actionable intelligence to crypto assets using machine learning. The platform mines and looks for insights at the blockchain level about all sorts of different different insights that are very specific to crypto assets. I done 10 years and building cloud systems at Microsoft, quant platforms, have had a couple of exits as an entrepreneur and been an active investor as well as a speaker and author in the space. But we're not here to talk about me. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to talk a little bit about the myth and sort of the belief that we have about social media analytics for crypto assets and how that contrasts with the reality. What lessons did we learn trying to extrapolate and create some meaningful insights using machine learning for social and news media for crypto assets? And I want to close it with some ambitious ideas that we're exploring and that we would love to get your feedback on. So let's start. When crypto markets are highly rational, highly nascent, there is a lot of market fluctuations and volatility, and there is a common belief that a lot of those movements are influenced by social media, and you're seeing by the social media commentary, and you're seeing that time and time again of how different platforms are trying to provide some intelligence and some justification about price movements based on the sentiment on Twitter, on Telegrams, or other outlets like that. So there is no lack of sensational headlines from research papers from Ivy League schools that claim that Google searches are highly correlated with price movements in Bitcoin, to all sorts of sentiment analysis algorithms based on Twitter and Telegram that claim to be highly predictive in terms of the price of crypto assets. So every other week we find new things like this, right? New ideas and new claims about the correlation between sentiment and topics in social media and the price movements in Bitcoin. So we hear things like that Twitter sentiment is a predictor for the price movements of crypto assets, that Telegram discussions contain a lot of insights that could fuel different price rallies. Obviously, news is huge, and in a market that has a lack of disclosures, regulated disclosures, news play a prominent role in terms of how do we get information about this asset class. So analyzing news, a lot of people try to analyze sentiment and extract intelligence from news in order to predict price movements on crypto assets. So when you compare crypto with other asset class, sure, the sentiment, topic analysis, and all that, it is present, that there is some techniques that are applicable to our asset class, but in crypto it's disproportional, right? It seems like there is an abundance of this type of attempts, and there is a good reason for that. if we need to boil it down, if we need to summarize the different causes of this sort of explosion in terms of crypto asset analytics for social and news media, there are two main factors. One, crypto markets remain highly irrational and are highly dominated by narrative. Technically, every market is dominated by narrative, but in the case of established financial markets, the rationality of the market tends to compensate over narrative over a large period of time, where in crypto is completely irrational. And also is the fact that we're living in the golden era of machine learning and data science. So a lot of the techniques that were very difficult before today are very simple to implement. And we're seeing a lot of, let's say, not super sophisticated attempts to extrapolate intelligence from textual data and try to get some insights, because it's really that easy. So let's break that down. So in terms of the rationality argument, in crypto markets, we don't have established disclosure mechanisms. There is no like SEC filings that need to happen. So a lot of the narrative takes place in social media channels, and because we do not understand crypto as an asset class, there are many instances of what this thing that many philosophers, including Nassim Nicholas Taleb, likes to call the narrative fallacy. That is that when we don't understand something, we create narrative that sort of justify our understanding or our suspicion about the causes of a specific phenomenon. So every time there is a price movement, you see that there is certain explanations in social media, and people try to draw correlations when they don't really exist. The other argument is more related to the evolution of machine learning. So today there are many platforms, the Watson Developer Cloud, Microsoft Cognitive Services, the Google APIs, the AWS Recognition, and Poly, that expose text analytics model, natural language processing, natural language understanding as very simple APIs that any developer can call into lines of code and get some basic sentiment analysis done. So it's very tempting to try to use those technologies instead of trying to create your own models that are very, very complex to do. So if you go into the crypto analytics platform space, you're gonna see a number of platforms, a vast majority of them, that are using something like a Watson behind the scenes and things like that, because it's very easy to use, but it's also highly ineffective, and we're gonna see why. So when you combine those two factors, the fact that the market is really driven by narrative and the fact that it's very easy to create very basic natural language text analytics model, that's what's causing a lot of the explosion in this type of analysis in the crypto market. Now, when we go into the reality of this, it's quite different, right? And we've done a ton of analysis in this area. As a matter of fact, if in the first version of the TheBlock platform, we have all sorts of sentiment and topic analysis, and we sort of retired for a few months until we had a better thesis in terms of how to do this, because we actually felt that it was misleading to a lot of our customers and partners. So the reality is, let me give you a few data points that might help you understand this phenomenon from a different perspective. Mainstream text analytics and natural language understanding techniques, they don't understand crypto semantics. So if you use something like the Watson system, it's how it's called, the APIs, it doesn't understand what a whale is. It doesn't understand what a hodler is. It doesn't understand any of those semantics that are very specific to crypto. It doesn't understand market conditions, right? It doesn't understand that the price of Bitcoin is down today drastically for different reasons. So it's very hard to contextualize the analysis if you're not creating a model that is very trained on those circumstances. There is a tendency to try to extrapolate sentiment from news, but the fact of the matter is that well-written news should have neutral sentiment. News are about facts, not about expressing sentiment about a specific, and even if they do express a specific opinions, it's not very visible to a machine learning models. So if you run sentiment analysis on CoinDesk, Cointelegraph, and all that, most of the sentiment is going to be trending around 0.5, which means neutral. And that's a fact. So a lot of the sentiment models for news are not providing any real value. Twitter, Telegram are full of biased messages. So there are press releases that go there. The founders of the creators of tokens are there. It's very biased. There is a lot of noise. There is a lot of discussions that have really no correlation to price movement. So it's really hard to interpret. And finally, thinking about, well, not finally, but thinking about that you're going to create a sentiment model that is correlated to price or things like that, that's next to impossible. In the quant financing world, we call those power factors. That are factors that have a single factor that could have a correlation with price. Those are very hard to find. Most likely, you need to create models that are multiple factor sentiment topics, there's volatility and other things that could give you a prediction angle. But thinking that there is a one-to-one correlation, that's really unheard of. I mean, it could happen, but only, even if it happens, it will be during short periods of the market and not consistently. So when you factor all those things together, how do we go about this? There are some techniques that you can use that will provide meaningful information about crypto assets based on news and social media. But before we go there, I would like to do like a very, let's say, gentle introduction to the deep learning for text analytics and what are the type of techniques that are relevant here. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A channel. So in terms of this area of natural language understanding, text mining, however you want to call it, has exploded in the last few years. It has exploded partially because of this revolution that we call deep learning. So the deep learning is really related to the evolution of neural networks. For decades, right, there was a school of thought in machine learning that believed that neural networks were the right architecture to use, and that was really impossible to implement with the technology of a few decades ago. And then finally, with the creation of GPUs and things like that, suddenly it became possible to create neural networks with many layers and many levels. And a lot of those techniques were used for image analysis, speech analysis, and text analysis. So lately, we have seen that's where all these technologies like Watson, Microsoft Cognitive Services, and all that evolved from the school of deep learning. When we think about what is relevant, what techniques are really relevant for crypto assets, there are many, but there are three that are the main ones that we should focus on: sentiment analysis, topic extraction, and tone analysis. Those three account for about 90% of the analysis that you can do effectively today. You can do other variations, but it's really on edge cases. So sentiment analysis is the most established one. These are models that will give you a positive, negative, or neutral score based on a specific text. The key here is to have models that are very tailored, very specific, very trained on the contextual nature of the text that you're analyzing, which means models that understand crypto, that understand the terminology of crypto, the semantics of crypto, the market conditions of crypto, versus a model that is just trained on the English language and has no contextual information of crypto asset. Topic analysis is extracting relevant topics of a specific text. So it could tell you this text is about blockchain, this text is about Bitcoin, it's about the SEC, it's about Mark Zuckerberg testimony yesterday. So specific topics that summarize a text. There is a subset of topic analysis that is called entities analysis that is more related to identifying nouns and relationship between those in a text, but topic analysis is sort of the superset of techniques in that area. And tone analysis is related to emotions. You can look at a text and is it beyond positive, negative, or neutral? Is it expressing happiness or disappointment or sadness or anxiety and things like that? So tone analysis is quite fascinating because when there is an intersection between that and the behavioral economic research. So when you start mixing those two, you can extrapolate a lot of interesting insights related to crypto assets and the information that is exchanged in social media outlets. So how does this really work? So here I would like to go through a few lessons that we actually learned when trying to implement a few of these things in our platform and getting feedback from our customers. So, for instance, news are a great source for topics, but not really sentiment. So the sentiment of news, as I said before, should be neutral. And that's, if you analyze most of the top news sources in crypto, that's what you're going to get. But news are very focused on a discrete topic, particularly in crypto, that we have short pieces of information. We're not talking about multi-page articles and things like that. They're very centered on a specific topics, and those topics tend to happen and occur over time. So you can effectively measure the influence of a specific topics on price fluctuations over time. But the meta point here is, when you think about news, when you think about CoinDesk or TheBlock, think about topics. Do not think about sentiment. If anybody tells you that they're doing sentiment for news, please run for the door, because that's completely misleading. Not all news sources are equally relevant. So the influence that sources like CoinDesk, Cointelegraph, TheBlock have in the crypto market is exponentially higher. CryptoSlate, others than other sources that have a very small readership. Also, news are constrained to the top crypto asset. It's hard to do a consistent news analysis about a token that is ranked in, I don't know, on the 200 or 100, right? It's typically constrained to the top 20, 25 tokens. And then by focusing on the key news outlets, you don't only get the influence, but you remove all the noise. So you don't need to deal with press releases and blog posts and things like that that are very biased. And the analysis, it becomes way more intelligent that if you're analyzing everything. So if you're building a topic analysis model for news in crypto asset, or recommendation is focus on the repeatable sources. Do not take every news outlet. You need to create your own models and train it on the crypto terminology. So if you use a Watson API, the Watson Assistant, the Microsoft Cognitive Services, and NLP APIs, the results that you're gonna get are based on just pure English language semantics and are really not contextualized to crypto, which means they're gonna be very misleading. So take your favorite analytics platform, you're gonna find plenty of sentiment graph that are going with that topic graph that when you looked at it, it doesn't provide any information. And then interestingly enough, you can actually do exercises of quantifying this information, the influence that some topics have on price movements over time. So this is something that's still highly experimental that we did at IntoTheBlock with topic analysis. So we created a series of sources based on the top 15, 20 news outlets on the market. We're analyzing topics every hour based on those, and we're projecting those. In this case, it's visualized day by day on the with the price curve. So the way it works is you can actually see the key topics on that price movement, and when you click on that topic, it's actually going to tell you the news. So we can actually show you the source from when those topics came from. If there is actually 50 news about the same topic, we actually take the top 5 or whatever, but we try to at least visualize it in a way that is more objective and that help you sort of understand how different topics. This is an initial step. I mean, it's not the end goal. Over time, you can quantify as those topics recur. You can quantify the influence of those topics on a specific price movement under a specific market conditions. So when you click on one of those, it would actually tell you, hey, here are the specific news that are triggering that topic to relevance, and you can make your own judgment based on that. So Another idea here is, I'm sorry about the font, I think our design team didn't get to this on time. Twitter and Telegram are, so if news are a very good source of topic intelligence, Twitter and Telegram are a very poor source of topic intelligence because they're very biased. You get a lot of people that have very opinionated, tweeting and retweeting and commenting. So it becomes very noisy, very biased. The grammar is not great. So you get a lot of misspells and things like that that tend to confuse models, and a lot of the discussions have really zero relevance to price, zero relevance to price movement. However, Twitter and Telegram are a great source of sentiment intelligence because over time, because of the volume, so news are very sporadic, or you get a few dozen a day or things like that about the same topics, right? But Twitter is a huge source of textual information, and the volume makes that sentiment over time becomes more and more relevant. So if you're thinking of building a sentiment analysis model for crypto assets, here are a few recommendations that we have. Focus on data feeds on Telegram and Twitter feeds, Telegram channels, Twitter feeds that are done by, handled by influencers. Not everyone, but the people you follow, the analysts, the people that are constantly tweeting and providing information that is relevant to price. Similar to topic, create your own models. So models that are constantly trained on the specifics of crypto assets, of the contextual information, that are also trained to avoid a lot of the biases and writing styles that you find on Twitter and Telegram, the misspells and things like that. So building your own model in this case, it sort of helps you control for a lot of those data accuracy issues that you get in those channels. So this is the first iteration of the Twitter and Telegram. We have one for Twitter and Telegram sentiment that we have into the blog. You can see it for any asset. You can see the positive, negative, neutral, and the price curve and you can check and show only the positive or the negative. And this is a custom model that is trained specifically for contextual information for the crypto market. It's not based on generic English syntax and semantics. So here, those are some iterations, but let me give you a few more ambitious ideas. Let me try to get you thinking about what can be done once you take those initial steps and hopefully get your feedback. So think about this idea of a market influence factor. So once you have topic analysis and you can measure that over time, based on a specific market conditions that are described by price, by volatility, by volume, by all sorts of things, you can judge the influence of a specific topics. So if the Libra hearings yesterday had a negative impact on the price movements of Bitcoin under this market conditions, that over time you can assign a score to that and measure, and the next time Libra comes up and the market conditions are similar, it becomes more predictable. It takes time. It takes a lot of retraining, but this is a technique that has been used many times. This is something that is actively used in quant funds to monitor, for instance, earnings reports, to train models that read the earnings report and learn over time to look for specific topics and the influence and try to take positions in very short time intervals. Another idea that has been voiced by our customers is this idea of a popularity factor. So imagine that you've judged a popularity based on Twitter, Telegram, and news of a specific token for a specific market conditions. So you can train what is called linear regression models that could measure the influence of popular and unpopular tokens on a specific price fluctuations. If we were in a market in which you could actually short assets very effectively, there are very famous quant strategies in which if assets are similar and you have a popular one and an unpopular one, you tend to short the popular one and go long on the unpopular one, because you assume that over time those will behave. The unpopular one will get to the same levels of the popular one. So popularity is sort of an interesting factor that you can measure and try to correlate to price. A news influence classifier, this is an idea that we're playing with. So instead of going to news and trying to identify topic, imagine if you label and you can actually manually go and say, look, train a model to in the influence that a specific news are having in price fluctuation, just because you know, like when the backed futures disappoint, that had an influence, negative influence on Bitcoin. So those type of news, you can say, look, it had a 0.9 influence on the price of Bitcoin over this period of time. And you create those data sets over a certain period of time, and you train a neural network that learns that influence, right, from humans, from analysts. And then over time, it looks for similar news based on topics and sentiments and market conditions, and could become more predictable. The outputs of those models could act as predictors in terms of price fluctuation. This is something that is actively done in equities today. So it's a technique. This is not a new technique that IntoTheBlock is inventing or anything like that. We're just adapting ideas from the more established quant financial circles into this world. So this is an idea that has been implemented before. Like anything in machine learning is fairly new, right? But it has been done before. So it's something that we have been playing with. So we're working in all sorts of these ideas. If you're part of the IntoTheBlock community, you know that regularly myself, my team, have been asking for feedback about this. Some of the ideas that we incorporated in the first social release, or I will say the second social release, but the first one that included this model, were based on you and your feedback, and we're actively asking for more ideas like that. So if a quick summary about this. When done right, social and news media analysis could be relevant sources of insights for crypto assets. There is plenty of data there that could be helpful, but you cannot be lazy and try to take the easy way out and try to use an API that has no idea what crypto markets is and expect that it's just gonna give you a score that is very relevant for a price movement. I mean, I wish it was that simple. So there are three main techniques that you can focus on: sentiment, topic, and tone analysis. We didn't quite cover tone analysis because we haven't released anything relevant in this area yet, but we're playing with a couple of ideas to try to judge how effective it is. And keep in mind that no single method is enough by itself. So if you're playing with predictions or try to understand the influence in market, you need all of them and more. So you need sentiment and topics and volatility and risk and all sorts of things in order to create comprehensive models that give you some insights about the movement in crypto assets. It's not gonna be that the sentiment a score of a specific model is the perfect predictor. It might be for a week or so, but it's gonna go away. So you need to think holistically across. Social is just a component of the market, it's not the market itself. So with that, I would like to open it for questions. I haven't seen any questions on the Q&A yet. Our next webinar, my partner Leonard Boer is going to cover investment criteria, data-centric investment criteria for crypto assets. Leonard, in addition to be a thought leader in analytics, is an active investor in the space. So this is like eating your own dog food type of thing. So we're going to talk about data-centric strategies and criteria that you can use to select crypto assets. In terms of if you have any questions about this, you can use the Q&A. If not, you can shoot me an email to jr@intotheblock.com or through my Medium channel. I'm super active in Medium, or just go to intotheblock.com and try to chat with our team. We tend to be very responsive and super engaged with our user base. Oh, sorry, I was looking at the Q&A and there is a ton of questions in the chat. Let me. Barbara said that we're right about the social media, and the default modes that they don't provide, and that they have done some interesting work in that space. So a quick plug for Barbara there. You have the link to our next webinar. Ernesto, as always, has insightful questions. So he's asking, can you recall a case in which social started or ended price movements? Not off the top of my head. I tend to think of social as an amplifier and not really as a trigger to a lot of these things. I remember one case of the price of Ethereum that was a fake news published in 4chan about Vitalik's accident or something. That was a huge drop, but that was obviously very manipulative. One anonymous said, like, how can we classify 50,000 sources? I mean, yes. So when or stream data, we use different data providers that provide different sources to us. The total is about 50,000, but obviously that includes a ton of Twitter accounts and Telegram channels and a ton of news outlets as well. Claudio asked, how do you determine if an indicator is leading or lagging? Well, I mean, that's very simple. So typically you quantify that over time, and an effective technique is to use linear regression to go back, right? To imagine that I create price and sentiment and topic over time, and then I go back and see if there is correlation, right? If there is correlation between the sentiment today times T and the price in T plus X, right? So those are some modes in which you tend to determine whether it's a leading indicator. Okay, so I guess I didn't explain that before. The anonymous attendee is asking me, how do we label the news sources? And the question is, we don't. So we're not, the labeling ideas that we're playing with is for news, and it's for a specific set of news. So the ones that we're using today, we're using on supervised and semi-supervised learning. So we're not labeling those data feeds today. If you're referring to the idea about the news classifier, that does require labeling, but that's obviously for news, and it's for a subset of that over a certain period of time. Good. I think I was able to get through this with my voice or lack of it. So I thank you very much for joining. I hope to see you in the next webinar. If you have feedback about this, please send it via email. This was our last release. We're actively working on this, so any ideas are welcome. So please share your ideas with us, and thank you very much for joining.